So hi everyone and welcome to our new podcast called AI4devz. My name is Isvy. So basically we had this idea of creating an AI podcast, but more like an AI podcast for developers, because nowadays AI is everywhere. It's for all software engineers. It's not only for AI engineers anymore. And we feel there is so much happening, so much momentum that we will have enough things to discuss every month and maybe even every week. So I'm one of the hosts together with Renu. So my name is Isvy. I've been an engineer for the past 20 years, and I've been working in AI for the past 3 years.
Hi everyone, this is Renu, and welcome to our very first episode of AI4devz. So like Michael mentioned, we are very excited about whatever is happening in the AI industry. I have been in the technical sector for the last 10 to 12 years, and we have all seen it evolving as of it is today. So I hope you all are tuning into a very nice and interesting conversation today.
Thank you, Renu. So tonight we're lucky to have two guests, Kevin and Rajesh. Maybe Kevin can introduce yourself.
Thank you. So my name is Kevin. I'm the CTO for Palo IT in Singapore. I've been in the tech industry as well for 15 plus years, starting from software engineering, so very hands-on, and today I'm still hands-on. Working a lot with AI, if not almost only lately. So quite passionate about it, professionally and personally, helping as well a couple of companies in Singapore adopting AI and transforming out as well part of IT with all this new technology.
Hi everyone, my name is Rajesh. I've been an entrepreneur for quite some time, and most recently I was at DBS. Where I was heading a platform called Digital Ecosystems. I also did a dual role of chief architect for consumer banking. So October last year, I took a break, in the midst of all the happenings of the Gen AI and everything else that's going on, to see if there is any niche that can be created and build a product around it. And I spent almost 6 months basically playing around with the tools.
Okay, and before we go ahead, we also wanted to give a big thank you to Zenica. So Zenica is the company hosting us tonight. It's an IT consultancy which has an office in Singapore. So we are in Singapore here tonight. Thanks a lot for hosting us. So now we're going to start. The thing is that this episode didn't come out of the blue, actually, and we didn't choose Kevin and Rajesh randomly. The reason why we are here all together tonight is because we did a lot of meetups in Singapore, and both of them have very interesting stories in terms of what they've been doing with AI, and in particular AI coding assistants. So can you guys maybe tell us the story first on why you're here tonight, and how did you fall into this world in the past few months? So maybe Kevin, if you would like to start.
So as mentioned earlier, I'm very passionate about technology, but as well AI more recently. I remember playing with the GitHub Copilot when it was beta, I think in 2021. I wasn't very impressed at that time. It was just a fancy, autocomplete, I would say. But I think it's been a long way since then, and I'm quite impressed on where it's going. Quite excited as well about where it's going, the future. I think it's going to be very, very, nice, but surprising. So I've been in a couple of meetups, I've had a couple of talks, and very happy to be here tonight to share about my insight and share a bit of my experience that I have at Palo IT, as well as my personal side, playing with different tools. So thank you for inviting me.
Sure, thank you. And maybe just to add, I know you've been doing a lot of what you guys call AI transformations.
Yes.
Where you actually go to see customers and teach them how to use Windsurf, Copilot, and so on. That's your main activity now, right?
That's correct. So I'm very involved as well with helping organizations transforming, adopting AI, but not only for coding, across the whole SDLC, providing training as well, coaching, and really on the ground with teams delivering products, leveraging AI fully. So we're able now to generate 90 to 95% of the product assets fully with AI.
Okay, I think we'll go in more details on this later. And what about you, Rajesh?
Yeah, just like I mentioned, I did take a break to see if there is any problem worth solving, in creating a product around this, and developer experience specifically. And For the past 6 months, I've been on a break, so I don't have any real problem to solve or a report to work on. So for that reason, I ended up actually building half a dozen different products of my own, right? So of various different sizes. And one of the products which I've been working on recently is called Trading Assistant, which is a real product which talks to the market, gets the real data, the market data, and you're able to trade out of it directly. That's something I've been looking at. And pretty much like what Kevin said, north of 99% of the code is actually developed by the tools, and I've been just doing assisting this essentially. So it's a sizable project, about 20,000 lines of code, in Python, TypeScript, Svelte, and front end being about 25% of the code, everything generated by the tool itself.
That's actually pretty amazing. And I think this is the very first testament of that. Maybe a few years back, when we take a break like this, I don't think it was too feasible to create dozens of products in just 6 months, which you can actually give to the end user. So I think this is the very first testament. So when I go back to Kevin, as you are helping these organizations out as well, there are many AI coding assistants out there. Cursor, Copilot, Windsurf, which we all have been using. What are some of the key features that you actually like about these tools in comparison to maybe what they were, let's say, a few years back?
I think they've been a long way since like a few years back, as you mentioned. Things started with just more like an ask mode, like a bit ChatGPT that read your code and give you suggestion on how to implement the code, the function, and so on. But then it came about like editing files, but it was very I edit your files, and that's pretty much it. But more recently, we see more agents. So agentic AI comes really into the picture. And it's very exciting because the agent is almost a conversation with someone about your code. It's way more interaction. And the agent is able as well to crawl through your product, through your code, to really have an understanding of it, understand the context, and you can give instructions as well, like rules, or you can have reusable prompts. Now we see about MCPs coming. So, like MCPs, like plugins that the agent can leverage to connect to service outside. You can develop your own MCPs, and that's just the beginning. We can as well choose different models. I think just today, through the fall release, I just play a little bit with it, no real experience yet, but keep changing every day. And that's what is today. Tomorrow and in 1 month, I don't know what's going to be there, but I would say today what I use the most is agent with MCP and good instructions, good prompts.
And are we seeing actual developer productivity with the use of these tools, like actual production-like use cases?
Oh, massive. I mean, at Productivity, on a daily basis, all our engineers are working this way. So leveraging, they all have Copilot licenses. We do as well play with other tools, like you mentioned, Cursor, Windsurf. I do play personally as well with like a bit of IntelliJ, with like the Journey that came out recently. But we use that on really production grade systems. So it's not just for POCs or MVPs or just playing over the weekend. It's really part of our daily work. We do work this way now.
That's very interesting. And on this topic itself, maybe to Rajesh. So like we mentioned, we have seen a transition from some chat-based external platforms to look for the suggestions to actual integration with IDEs. And you have been actually experiencing this for yourself for the last 6 months. So how important it is to actually have an integrated IDE experience for these AI coding assistants?
I mean, you must have heard of this term called flow-based programming or coding or anything like that. That is quite important, essentially, because you're not leaving the primary tool as a developer to basically continue your coding. That's where most of these tools basically converged on, right? So whether it's Windsurf, Cursor, or GitHub Copilot, or anything for that matter, if you see, most of the UI interfaces ended up converging to be very similar, which means that they look and feel very same, and you're able to change, and they're able to basically edit your files, then and there itself. Which means that you're not actually missing any context, going to multiple tools and copying and pasting and all that stuff, right? So that's a big win, I would say, and also you get to see the diffs, in the flow itself, right there itself. So which makes it much more easier as a developer to continue with your chain of thought, pretty much.
And you personally have been using VS Code and VS Code based IDEs quite a lot, and recently many of these AI coding assistants are actually based out of that fundamental IDEs. So how has been your experience so far in that?
Okay, I mean, as we discussed, they're both Windsurf and Cursor having the leading the pack, and they are both based on their VS Code. And if you see that the interface is very similar from the chat, you just go to the chat and you describe what is the problem you're trying to solve or the feature that you're trying to implement, and you end up getting pretty much a similar kind of output. So from that point of view, the tool differentiation is very slim. So there is not much difference between whether you're using Cursor or Windsurf. And the same goes to GitHub Copilot as well. The latest version, if you see, you pretty much feel the same. You just ask it, what you're actually trying to build as a feature. And, in fact, the best part that has happened in the recent past with all these models being so powerful is that you can elicit the requirements nicely within that IDE itself. And they will come back with, you can ask it to prompt back if there is any clarifications they need, and they are able to come back and clarify with a very nice questions, and then go back and implement the features completely. Yeah.
It's interesting what you're mentioning as well, all these differences that they come more and more close to each other.
Yeah.
That you go from one tool or the other, they more or less have all the same functionality today.
Precisely.
And I think this week, if I'm not wrong, at the Microsoft build, I think it was there, they announced that they're going to open source GitHub Copilot. So that means that we're going to see even more of these tools based on the same one, like VS Code and Cursor and so on.
Yeah.
So that's going to be quite exciting as well to see.
Precisely. And also, as a developer, the switching cost becomes zero, right? Yeah. So, you'll feel at home no matter which tool you're using. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
I also have a question for you, Rajesh. So, I've seen you at least using 3 or 4 languages when coding with Cursor. I saw you doing the Python and the backend in Python, the front end in TypeScript, and using Shell and so on. Do you think that using those tools make us more polyglots, and do you think they work with all languages coding?
Precisely, yes. Yeah, I do feel that. And one of the things we always did as developers is obviously pick the right programming language for the problem that we are trying to solve, right? So if it is machine learning or anything, you would probably lean towards Python versus something else. You would go for the Java, and you could be doing Swift or something else, right? So the good thing about these models being polyglot is that I can actually be, as a single developer, work on all these 3 or 4 different languages, right? So the challenge being a developer, going full stack, doing multiple different languages, is that remembering the semantics and the syntaxes especially, right? So, you need that colon for your Python versus a bracket for, curly braces for, your other languages. So that is gone now. You don't need to worry about any of those things because everything comes for free for you. But the important thing is that knowing how we are structuring and just letting them know, you get the code, and all we have to do is review and verify everything is in order. Yeah. Yes, truly, it is. We have gotten to a stage where anybody can be a polyglot engineer. Yes, I would say so.
And do you think if we take this even one step further, there's always a debate about whether or not we should be back-end engineer versus front-end engineer, and there should be a separation between the both. But it's also a matter of language, right? So front-end usually is JavaScript, back-end can be anything. So do you think using these tools will actually help us actually all become full-stack engineers, or they will still be specialized?
Yes. I mean, I can vouch for that. Though I can write some front-end code, I never enjoyed doing so. But yes, with this I'm able to. As I mentioned, 25% of the 20,000 lines of code that I generated, right? It was basically front-end, Svelte code, right? Svelte is the framework similar to React, as you know. So that's what I've been using for front-end. And yes, and it is using the latest version of Svelte, which is 5, the views. And the good thing about all these models is that they know how to structure it and how to use a the concepts here around stores and how do you actually, where do you where do you save your variables? Everything is already taken care for you, as long as you're able to structure the code. To that end, to answer your question straight, yes, it is possible for anybody to be that true full stack engineer.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So now that we talked a bit more about the, let's say like the productivity gain and the coding itself, Kevin, I think you have an experience which goes beyond that because you guys are trying to change the whole project lifecycle. Even maybe the way that product managers should be working, maybe even the way designers should be working. So can you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, that's quite interesting. We've done a lot of experiments, So we've been experimenting as well to have designer, to have a product manager, BAs working in the IDE itself. So, like we could use like Claude outside and others that could potentially as well. But we tried as well to have everybody using like VS Code or Cursor and really leveraging the AI, those assistants, not just for code, but everything that comes before as well. Like from design to user story to analyzing basically the product and infrastructure as code or creating documentation. The whole thing end to end is something we're experimenting within the IDE as well. I think some team works better than other. I think it's a lot of, you have to first help them understanding how that works. It's a bit of a bridge, to really go over. But overall, it's been quite successful. And we see that there's a lot of improvement if we're able to bring everybody together and really work with the AI and not against the AI. Because that's another problem that we see is a lot of, okay, the AI doesn't do what I want, it doesn't work, And I always say that the AI is going to work. It's you who need to change and really be able to go with the AI and work with the AI for it to execute what you want. So it's been very successful, and overall we run a couple of projects. So usually we do like some pilots. So we go with the company, we want to try this new approach. We run a pilot, so end to end, and then we measure with different metrics how it works. And usually after that we go through transformation, training, and so on. So far we've done a couple of projects like that, and all of them have been quite successful.
Okay. And for example, like I know you told me before that the way product managers work in this project is different, right? They don't write user stories on Jira anymore, if I'm correct? So
No, that's correct. If I go in more detail, so for example, let's say we could be here like a team, right? And rather than just me writing and taking requirements as usual, we just talk about the project. So here we can just record, talk about it, having a transcript, could be via Teams, via Zoom, via anything, and then I will take that transcript, and from there I can extract user stories. And then from those user stories, then I can go in more detail technically. So the agent could analyze my code based on the story, then give me, what he's gonna do. I say, okay, that looks great. And then let's go implement. And I can feed as well the design from Figma, or even on the fly, I can give, for example, a design system. And I can say, okay, for that screen, based on this design system, come out with something. And then the designer could, here together, revise on the fly and adjust with the AI, because it goes so fast now that the code is generated so fast that we don't have to wait for all this approval, that, okay, here's the design, it's going to take me 2 weeks to do it, then the code is going to take 1 week to do the story and so on. Now it goes so fast that you can really iterate way faster than, before, like a sprint that was 2 weeks. Now in a couple of days, you're able to do exactly the same. And that's really a game changer. But just the way of working, you have to change your mind, how you're going to approach it.
What about the way designers, because you mentioned that there's a way for product managers to be more efficient.
Yeah.
Like you generate out of the meeting, you generate meeting notes with user stories that you can reuse directly. If I'm a designer and I use Figma, is it still the same as it was 2 years ago, or is it more productive?
So we see, for example, Figma, I think they're coming up with their own tools as well. It's okay. It's not that great yet. I think it's going to improve more and more. But what I noticed as well, something we've been experimenting is we have a design system, and we could, for example, you could be a designer or product manager, and we could just draw a watermark or draw on a sheet of paper, take a picture and say, based on this design system, create me the page. And basically it goes way faster. So we're looking at rethinking the way we do design. But I feel that it's going to change. We haven't really nailed it yet, but I think we need to find a new way of approaching design, because going through requirements to high fidelity Figma and then from there going to code, that's not going to work anymore. The project that worked so far, the bottleneck were not the code anymore. I worked on a project where the backlog was empty and was waiting on designer to do design or product to give us requirements. Because now the code goes so fast that it's just impressive.
Yeah. Can I add to that the design part of things? So yeah, to your high fidelity designs and whatnot, I think that will change pretty soon. For the trading app, which I mentioned, I just used draw.io to basically come up with a very low fidelity, UI, the page that was required. And of course, I did specify. I don't have a DSL setup. It's my own project. But I told it to use Tailwind and certain specific frameworks, and it just came up with the entire page. I didn't have to go to Figma or some other
Actually,
tool.
a screenshot from the IO and you give it to
Precisely. That's all I did. Yeah. That's where we are today from the design perspective.
But it's interesting, some models are better than others, at doing design or doing stories or coming up with like Tailwind or
Yeah.
it really, I noticed, for example, GPT is very good at stories, requirements and so on,
Yeah.
whereas Claude are better at coding and design, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, I've been using 3.5 for most of solid 3.5 for most of the coding. Yeah, I agree.
But what you guys are mentioning is, do you believe that this is a real world that we are living in? Because Rajesh, like you mentioned that, okay, you do something in draw.io and then eventually it led to your kind of like product, right? In a large scale organization, there are many processes, there are many bottlenecks on how a product actually goes to the end users.
Yeah.
Do we really believe this is happening in large scale organizations as of today? Do we have any real examples?
Oh, it does. Yes. So no, it's something we do with real projects. So I've done one that is going on production, and we basically had some initial estimate of about 11 weeks for a team of 4. We came in, give some training, coach them on how to basically apply that, and we managed to deliver it in 5 weeks. So we divided by a bit more than 2 for the same scope, including design and everything, from an empty backlog. So that was something on a project that's in a real enterprise and not a pet project for the weekend. And another example, in Australia, we have done a couple for the clients, and they all projects that are like enterprise grade ready. They're not like just prototype. Yeah.
So what level of supervision actually goes into these projects? Because otherwise we are saying that everything is so streamlined and it's just a review. So in your experience, what level of supervision is required?
The first thing I say is don't trust the AI. So you're not going to trust what comes out of it. AI is just going to accelerate the production of those assets. That is code, that is diagram, that is design, and so on. But the human is always there to verify the output. So the team today, the agents are not autonomous. They're like semi-autonomous, that you still have to guide them, prompt them, and verify what's coming out. They might hallucinate, and they will hallucinate. But you are there basically to bring them back on track and say, oh, this is not what I asked, please redo this. Oh no, this button already exists. We reuse this one. So we are still needed today to really guide the AI. But the AI is really accelerating the way we do things, but don't trust the output.
So the best practices, just to add to that, the best practices that we have learned throughout the last decade or 2, that doesn't go away. It's just that, as Kevin mentioned, things are getting accelerated, but how you automate things, and how do you deploy, how do you actually check for security, how do you do your reviews, and anything that you have from the enterprise standard perspective on how you build and deliver software doesn't go away. It's just that you're introducing, parts of AI, driven development, in various stages of your journey. That's how I would see it. We cannot throw away everything we learned as engineers for the last 2 decades or more, right? That still holds good, and we have to. I want to just repeat what Kevin said. We have to review everything that just gets generated, because if that gets deployed and if there is an outage, we are answerable as humans. It's not the model or the tool.
Yeah.
So I have a question on this. I'm a bit worried about one thing. So as we discussed, we cannot now the best practice is kind of going prompt first, right? Basically, like we ask the AI to do some code. If it's not good and we see there is a mistake, we ask in the prompt to fix it. So in the end, I don't go to my IDE so often anymore. I'm more on the prompt than on the IDE itself. You can do it because, we can do it because we are experienced developers and so on. But what if we keep doing this for 5 years? Are we still gonna be good developers, or at some point we will not know how to tell it how to fix the code, right? Because we don't code anymore, we just prompt, right? Yeah. So I don't know, I was thinking, would it make sense maybe to have a practice when you say, okay, 4 days a week I'm prompting, 1 day a week I'm really coding? Would you think about something like this?
In my case, what I've been doing is that pretty much every time a large chunk of code that comes out of the model, before it goes into Git, the repo, I make sure that it is reviewed so that I have a quick sense of the lay of the land. Right? So without that, it becomes hard because the pace at which we are generating code with these tools, even living 4 days of code generated on a continuous basis is way too much to actually comprehend at the end of the week. And it also becomes quite hard to actually just keep doing once a week, to basically take so much to consume and get a feel for it. Yes, the tools are fantastic in the sense that they can summarize and tell you what has happened, right? So every Git, you get a commit, and I have a practice of actually making sure that any important learnings is actually put into a markdown within the repo itself. So the tool is already having that in memory. Windsurf has this concept of memory. What it means is that at the end of the coding session, it basically summarizes any important learnings as part of the session as well. So with that in place and the documentation which continuously evolves, I think we should continuously be on top of the code rather than doing it at a certain stage. The concepts, we have to be clear and we know what exactly is happening. With that in place, it's just a matter of checking whether that has been implemented the right way or not. Yeah, I would say do it more frequently, because I was showing Renu earlier. I have more than 1.5 dozen worth of stashes in GitHub. Git. Yeah, that's because I'm not happy with the way the tool coded. Right, so that happens all the time. So we just have to be aware of what's happening and just stash away. That's easy because it's so cheap for now. It's faster and it's cheaper to actually generate that code. We just have to make sure that it is accurate, and that's what we want. If it's not, just throw it away.
It's an interesting point of view and that question as well. Honestly, I'm not too sure what to think about. I can talk about for myself. It's been a while. I haven't really had time to code and properly go deep into coding. And whenever I want to code something, I always have to go to Stack Overflow or Google to find, how do I create my base Java file, or how do I compile this, or I forgot how to write my unit test, the exact syntax. So now, rather than wasting time going on Stack Overflow, Google, and so on, the AI does it for me. And when it's there, I'm like, oh yes, that's how I do it, that's correct. So I don't do the how anymore, the detail of it. I'm just reviewing. And I think if I do that often, that's what a lot of tech leads or a lot of more teaming with big team do. They do a lot of reviews, but they don't really code anymore. So I see that this is where it's going to change and shift a little bit. Is we're not going to do the code anymore, but we all be going to come reviewer. But now we need to be able to understand the code. And I think this is the challenge we're going to face. And honestly, I don't really have an answer. I had that question yesterday from someone who came to me, someone quite junior, and she was about to go in Switzerland to take a master in computer science. He's like, oh, but with AI, is that the right thing to do? I'm like, I think if it's good, you need to understand, the system, how things work, how you build, the code. But don't focus anymore on the detail and the how. Understand how the big picture work and how to guide and review what the AI. That's, at least today, that's my take. In 1 month, it might be different. But,
True.
Yeah.
So, just bringing back us to the same topic where we say that we have seen this shift in the entire SDLC cycle, Kevin. So that means the organizations have to put in an initial cost of actually bringing engineers on board to this. Many organizations actually have been unsuccessful at this attempt for many reasons, right? So what are your recommendations? How should any maybe small to medium to large organization should go about onboarding their organization to this new ways of working?
So I think it depends how far you want to push it. You can really push it to the extreme and say everybody is going to use the IDE, and that's going to be maybe extreme. It's like maybe for startup or like new organization that might start in this direction. But for existing and big organization, you want to take a more like, okay, we transform in Agile. So how we can really add AI into each of those steps and maybe link those steps. That's as a first transformation or like adoption. And then once this is successful, then you can maybe try to reduce and merge some of those items like designer and coder together. You can approach this way. What we've done so far is we do usually a small pilot, measure it, and then we look at the organization and how eager they are at changing. And then we do a plan together with them on adopting their current tool without disrupting too much. So let's say if they have Copilot, we're going to use Copilot. If they have Jira, we're going to integrate with Jira. I'm not going to tell them, don't use Jira anymore. Everything is in the repo now, all your stories are there. Like, okay, no, let's start with Jira and let's do MCP to integrate the two. And then we see how it goes. And then we try to push it further. So it's really tailored for every company on how we want to approach it. But it has to be like a transformation, because for me, it's really a mindset change. That's really the most important, is how you're going to change people on how they work and how they approach AI. I think this is the most challenging things I've seen with the AI. It's not the tool, it's people. And every transformation is the same. It's how you convince and change people the way they work so that they don't feel threatened. And with AI, it's even a bigger threat. I think this is the biggest challenge we have.
So, like you mentioned, that people are the actually keys of change, any change management. So maybe my question to Rajesh is, what are some common challenges that actually developers face in using these tools, and why are they hesitant actually to use these tools?
I mean, in what I've seen and what I've heard also is that they don't see this as helping them much, and for whatever reason, they might think that it is taking a lot longer, or the suggestions that it gave is not good enough, or they might have done it faster or anything of that sort. That's one of the things I commonly hear. Kevin might have other good reasons for that. But then again, we are humans, right? So when we do see something which can potentially threaten, our way of life, we always have some kind of resistance to adapt. That's one of the other human side of things I feel, which is probably at play. Okay, so, but other than that, I do feel that, on the outset from the tool itself, I don't see any challenges, from the, adoption perspective. And so the other thing which I've seen is that, I've spoken to a couple of, startup CEOs as well. They do have this challenge of their developers not actually using on a day-to-day basis. They use it on a, once in a while, like, probably once or twice a week or anything like that. So despite them actually constantly pressurizing and telling them to use it. So there are no good reasons why we shouldn't be using it, but there could be, one of the reasons which I've seen, sorry, let me just rephrase the one part. If I'm a front-end developer, and some of the models which I've been using, they kind of hallucinate and they end up actually generating quite a lot of code which is not usable, right? So I had a code, for example, which ended up growing to almost 2,000 lines of code. It's a component built on Svelte. Without me noticing, I normally try to break it down as much as possible, but this one I ended up coding so in a state of flow, I ended up actually building, which is about 2,000 lines of code. What ended up happening after that is it became, unmanageable, and it became quite frustrating for me as a developer to basically continue to iterate on that, right? So that could happen for any developers if you're dealing with a large code base, or you're dealing with a file which is too big, which the the tool is not able to manage within this context size or whatever else is at play, then the output that you're getting is suboptimal, which basically defeats the purpose of the tool, which means that you're basically iterating several times to get a small little output, right? So that's when I actually end up stopping using the tool and doing the changes myself. So there are ways to actually get around that, but then again, yes, it's also, besides the tool, it's the human motivation and attitude at play, I would say. Yeah.
It's funny what you're saying as well, like, so, because for me, one of the things I tell to the devs or people using AI as well is you try to use AI even for small change, and why that is because you need to be good at prompting. And it's all about prompting and how you use the AI and how your mindset is not against the AI, but with the AI. And that AI can do, but how do you instruct him to do it or it to do it, right? And about if you just, even for a small change, if you're able to prompt so that he can do the change, it's a good exercise, a good training for you on how to prompt AI. And the more you do this, the more you're getting better at prompting, and the more you're able to direct the AI to do what you want.
Way of life you mentioned, right? And so let's address this elephant in the room question, which is like the job displacement. Will AI replace us? Will we still have our jobs, let's say 2 years, 3 years down the line? So Kevin, in your experience, because you are already transforming the SDLC cycles, reducing 11 weeks to 5 weeks, what do you think about this? What are real concerns that we as developers, engineers should look into or should be worried about?
It's a tough question. I think honestly it's scary and exciting at the same time. I feel that developer roles are going to change massively, and I think that people who don't adopt AI today is going to be out of job very soon. Because AI, for example, at Palo, that's part of the interview process now. Everybody that we hire needs to have AI prompting skills and know how to work with AI tools. And I see more and more companies doing this. And that's just the beginning of it. When agents are going to become autonomous and so on, going to become more efficient at it. And I feel that companies are going to have a different approach to it. We see some company that, we deliver 2 times faster. So there is 2 reactions to that. Either we can cut half of our people, and some companies are taking that direction. Some others are like, okay, great, we have 2 times, we have, more times to do other things. So we can either do more content, more quality, we can focus on different things. So there is these 2 approaches. And I think that we're going to see 2 types of company, and I cannot say that every company is going to cut everybody. Every company is going to do 2 times more. I think we depend on the direction that all of them take.
Sure. Maybe one follow-up question on this is, 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, it was all about agile transformation. Okay, you're going to be 5 times faster because you're going to do agile, okay? Thanks to Scrum and so on. Everything's going to change and so on. When you look at it retrospectively, we cannot say it was a failure because I think most teams are using Scrum or Kanban today and so on. They use some agile processes, but I think it's fair to say it's not perfect. Okay, it didn't go perfectly. So every time you need to change, you guys are both speaking about you need to change the way you do your day-to-day, right? So it's going to be different for sure. Are you really sure that this is really going to work? Because before we had agile transformation. Now nobody cares anymore. Now it's all about AI transformation. Are you really sure that this AI transformation is going to be successful?
I can take on this. For me, I do believe it is. There's different approach, right? We try to give Copilot licenses to everybody and hoping for the best. It really didn't work. We tried to give training, like a 1-hour training, how to use Copilot or Cursor. Didn't really work as well. It's a bit better. But what works is if you do really coaching, training, transformation, but you have to do it properly and to have a methodology to it. Like Agile came, it's not because I give you the Agile manifesto that you're going to be successful at it. You might be putting post-its on the wall, and that's a lot of companies do that, and they say they're Agile, but they're not really. So I think that the one that successfully transformed to Agile and the one that didn't. And I think we're going to see the same with AI, meaning that there's the one that just give license and hope for the best. They say they've done a AI transformation, and the one that really relook at the way they work deeply and change the way they work deeply. And I think this is where we're going to see the success of the transformation. And 10 years down the line, I'm sure it's going to be the same as Agile. Some that really going to see the benefit and others that not. We are taking our take about this process and methodology. We call it Genie 2 at Palo IT. It's our way of like framing the AI ways of working, like a methodology that works on projects. And this is our take at it. For now, it's been quite successful. And we've been doing this with at least one big company in Singapore that's going through a transformation now. I believe that's going to be successful. Let's see down the line.
To be fair, the first agile transformations were the first 2 months, they were successful as well, right?
Yeah.
So we have to see on the long term if
It's always the long term, yeah. I agree with you. I mean, for me, I do believe it's going to be quite a revolution because I believe in the tool and so on, personally. Let's see how company is successful at adopting it. I think it's really, we're going to see the one that really put effort and money into it because that's going to have some cost as well. Those tools are not free. But I think the productivity gain is going to really balance it out. That's what I believe.
Yeah. I mean, most of the companies, if you see even Google, Microsoft, pretty much everybody is announcing that they are like 25, 30%, whatever the percentage is of the new code that has been generated is generated through AI, right? So that speaks volume, right? So these are not small companies. One thing which needs to be tested is as the vintage of the software increases, how good how good are they to actually continue to iterate on top of, right? So that's where the rest of the things that we have learned over the period of time, still come into play. So it's not just it's the change we have today is that instead of humans writing something else, tool is aiding us, but everything else still remains the same. That's where I see, as long as we make sure that we are able to continue to iterate, build in a way that is maintainable and all those things that we have learned over the last 2 decades or so. I think this will, I don't know how many failed in terms of Agile, but in terms of the tool, the numbers are there, right? So that's a reality, right? So companies are saying, Kevin, and his team has already done it, in several companies. So there's proof, that it works. And yeah, I mean, it might be different this time around.
Yeah, Rajesh, since talking about how to iterate on this process and this change of mind, I think you are the first person I've seen ever doing vibe coding. And even you did it on stage before the term vibe coding even existed.
Yes.
So vibe coding is basically like we take someone who is not an engineer and we say that person should be able to write some code and put it in production.
Yeah.
And you are very brave because on stage you did it.
Yeah, once.
And there was a couple of issues, but anyway, if we take this process on the way to production, because a lot of people talk about vibe coding, but very often when you look at this, very often it's more like for prototyping, when they want to try some new ideas, but very often they don't really put it to production. So what's your take on this? Do you think that eventually some people will be able to write a nice application without being a developer? Are we going to reach this?
Yes and no. That's one very good example of no. In fact, this person became quite famous on X, which is Twitter, when he announced that he basically wrote an application just white coding it. Within less than a week, his app was hacked and his bill went up and whatnot and all those things. So I'm sure he's quite famous now, right? So yes, I mean that's one end of the spectrum. So the other end of the spectrum is like what we both mentioned, and I'm sure both of you are doing as well, is that if you know what you're doing, white coding or whatever you call it, yes, there is a lot you could get done. And the important thing is, like I mentioned about, making sure that we're building something that is maintainable. That's the reason why I embarked on this particular project, which I just mentioned. It grew to 20,000 lines of code, and I'm iterating on a daily basis. Literally, I can just wake up in the morning, I could think of some feature and then just add it, right? Like before the coffee, after the coffee, whatever I could do it. So it is possible. And the quality of code that is generated, you could tell it what constraints that you have around it, right? So these are the patterns and my Python code has to be Pythonic, and these are the models to use, these are the frameworks to use. So they can actually follow and get the same type of code.
That's your profession, right? You're a full-time engineer. So do you think that 5 years from now you will be able to do the same thing without being an engineer, or you don't see this happening?
Well, it's been 25 plus years I've been coding, so things have not changed. Yes, I did C, assembly, C++, and Java, and pretty much quite a few different languages. The concept as engineers, it does not change much. What I'm going to use, how you structure your data, and everything else does not change very much. Yes, frameworks will come and go. So how you basically build applications might change and all those things. But then again, as an engineer, the superpower you have now is that I don't need to understand every bit of how that new framework works, right? Conceptually, once we know what it is, like for example, I was mentioning one part of the application ended up being Svelte 4. When I was building a next feature, the tool realized that the previous feature was in Svelte 4 and it converted into Svelte 5, runes-based, application. So it can actually continuously evolve. And yes, to answer your question, it is possible. It's just that we'll be less coding, if that is what you enjoy doing. But then again, you'll be producing a lot more. Yeah.
Once an engineer is always an engineer.
Yeah.
I think that's the goal.
I do believe in few years that might happen. Like today, no. After training, with our sales, they're all able to develop an app, using vibe coding in few hours. They're all super excited. Will I ship that to production today? No. No, for sure not. But down the line, in 5 years' time, if you think about it, I kind of believe that, yes, that's going to be possible. Because what we see today is just agentic AI. I saw it in Google came up with a agent-to-agent protocol. So what I believe we're going to see is like models that are specialized in some aspect, let's say logging, monitoring, security, and so on. And those agents just going to communicate between them to be able to build a production-ready app. That's where I believe we're going. We saw like Microsoft released the SRE agent recently, or announced it. So that's coming for the cloud as well. So I feel that all these agents are going to have models specialized for specific tasks, and they're just going to communicate between them to build a production-ready app. When that's going to happen, I don't know, but I feel that's going to come sooner than later.
Yeah.
A bit scary as well, but yeah.
Sounds good. I think we had, when we did our preparation, we also thought about the future, when we would see, of course, it's probably we're going to be wrong, okay, because it's evolving so fast, it's very hard to know how far we go.
Yeah.
But we wanted to ask you your best take of what it will be like 5 years from now, like how we will be coding, or even like the designers, the QAs, how it will be. Is it like most people will still work the same way, or is it like we don't need engineers anymore? Do you have a best guess, or what the tools could look like?
I think 5 years is very hard to guess, because even what happened 5 days is because just this week itself there were so many announcements. Pretty much on a weekly basis you get to see so many different things. But yes, I can imagine, to add to what Kevin already mentioned, this agentic way of building software means that the entire stack that is required to basically manage, whether it's a security, governance of your software, and also testing and readiness to go to production, anything that is required from taking it from the idea to production, there will be quite a few different pieces of AI that will come into play, right? So, and also like what Nick rightly mentioned, there are companies which are building SRE DevOps agents. Yadav announced something around DevOps agents, things like that, right? So yes, world as we know would definitely change. It's not just about developers or anything. DevOps, SRE, designs, everything would change. 5 years is very hard to guess. I think by end of this year itself we'll see a profound change in the way we operate as software developers or producers, product managers, or whatever the role is.
I 5 years is tough to say. I think that, as I said earlier, that we're gonna have more agents working together. Where I see as well it might go is we're gonna have like UI or human interaction that will be generated on the fly by the AI for every user. So imagine you can go to your bank application and it's not gonna be a static website or like a coded website. AI will generate that experience for you on the fly for your needs, for what you want to achieve, based intelligence for all of us. I think at some point when AI is going to be fast enough and be able to be accurate enough, maybe 5 years, 10 years, I don't know, but I feel we're going to go towards that. Now, what does that mean for us? I don't know, as a software engineer, that's a bit scary as well. Are we just going to guide the AI and navigate and tell him what to do? Potentially, I think your brain and innovation and research and basically still knowing the business domain and guiding the AI is still going to be there. For how long, I don't know. But that's where I see it going.
Yeah.
We can discuss the artificial general intelligence next time.
Yes. I just remembered a couple of things that happened when we were talking about this. There were two things that happened. One was I was trying to basically build a chart component, and I know one component, open source component, which I use a lot. I basically told the agent to basically use that particular tool in a framework, and it came back and said, "Why do you want to use this?" Okay, I have a screenshot somewhere. I love that. So it basically suggested me to use something else, and I said that this was for candlesticks. And when I asked, "Why do you propose that?" and he basically said, "These are the reasons." And I said, "Fine. What about the licensing?" It said, "It is quite permissible. It's Apache 2.4. We checked all the boxes. As a lead developer, architect, or anybody, I would have done the same thing. I had the same experience in backend. I told the agent to the tool to basically build a Go service using a specific version of the framework, which was released last November or December. And it basically, when it actually used in the dependencies, it used the version prior to that. So as part of my review, I asked a question, why did you use this version instead of the latest? The answer basically was amazing. It said, this was released only 2 months ago. Would you like to use it? It may not be stable or anything of that sort. I was blown away by both these answers, where we are, from the tool perspective. As an architect, as a lead developer, that's essentially what I would have done. I wouldn't pick something that is so new, so brand new, without actually being tested for a while. So, yeah, I mean, I can see some parts of what's already happening. I can only imagine what can happen in a few months and years. Yeah.
Is there any area you don't suggest that we should not be using AI coding assistant?
It's a difficult question. I'm using AI for almost everything today, but I would say maybe outside of coding, more like for human interaction. I think that's quite important. For me, a team that's very well functioning is communication is at the core of it. I think that doesn't change. So yeah, I just feel that people are just gonna go back to their cave and just do build with the AI. So for me, I would be very proactive to really human interaction and keep it that. That's what I would really advise. And don't just ask AI for everything. Ask your colleague, go for coffee. AI is not doing that for you. Yeah.
And also while interacting with the assistant, the AI interact as if you're interacting with a co-worker or colleague, right? So that also helps. I think. Outside of that, I would say I agree with Kevin. I could not actually find any place where I couldn't use or try to introduce AI. But one thing I did see, I don't know if Kevin has any better example of this, the front-end code which I ended up facing the issues where it basically went into a loop where it could not actually solve the problem. I had to stop it and stash away the code and change myself. So there are places where that happens, but that is far and few between. So I would say, barring that, I never had any issues in terms of tooling itself and the models itself. And I've tried quite a few models, right? Whether it's 4.1, which comes for free as part of the Copilot, and then Windsurf, they've introduced something called as one, which is their own foundational model, which is quite interesting, and it's free as well as of now. So pretty much all the models are on par in generating pretty much what we want. So I know I'm not answering your question directly because I'm finding it hard to see where we cannot use AI.
I think we can use it everywhere, but then do we want to?
Well,
So,
yes.
like for the creative process, all those kind of things that we still want to basically not become vegetables and still, like make ourselves and the brain use. I think this is the part that we need to force ourselves to not use AI. Let's say I could maybe now like do a video edit or like make music, so those kind of things. I could use AI for that, or I can use my skills and learning something and just keep myself entertained. So I would say, maybe for the creative process and the thing that you really like, try to still use your brain and your skills. And for the thing you don't like, just leverage AI.
Yeah. I have one example. This is a counter example actually. A friend of mine, a previous colleague from my startup, he was a designer. He's a designer, the best I know. And he actually created 2 games just by prompting the AI. And it's not just creating that, it was noticed by Elon Musk and he retweeted it. Implemented.
And launched.
Yes. Yeah. It's using XAI, and he basically mentioned it, and it caught Elon Musk's attention as well, and he retweeted it. So, yes, it is happening. Anybody can produce, generate, and it can be done. Yeah. So that's where I'm finding it very hard. As long as you get the right thing, choose the right thing to do, choose the right tools to do, anybody can actually generate. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rajesh. Thank you so much, Kevin. That brings us to the end of this podcast. Very interesting, very insightful conversations. We learned a lot about what are the useful features that actually developers can use today, how organizations can actually leverage this whole transformation journey to become actually good at what they do, to become better, to reduce their all inefficiencies as well, how to not fail, like the previous agile transformation in some cases. And lots of these future emerging trends. I think the future looks really exciting. For me, the biggest takeaway is use it wherever you feel like you don't want to use your creativity brain. Also, do right this way. Otherwise, we will be left behind. I think there is no other way. For me, that is the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, maybe one thing we can add as well is that the main one big takeaway from this conversation as well is that things are changing so fast. In some way, we've been wrong so many times in the past trying to predict something that actually it's very interesting to think that maybe this conversation will be completely outdated 1 year from now, right?
Yeah. A few months from now.
Yes. That's quite exciting in some ways. So, yeah.
Thank you again. Thank you so much. And thanks to our audience for tuning in. We will be back with many more such interesting and real life scenario case studies. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, for my quick demo, I'd like to show something a little bit different that we can do with GitHub Copilot. So we can generate code, but as well we can generate other things for the project. So an example is here, I have a meeting with myself where I recorded it and I've just described what I see on a Figma, what requirements I want, and so on. And then I just extract the transcript and store it as a markdown in my project. From there, I have some reusable prompts. Those are prompts that are in my project that I'm using quite a lot. And here I've generated stories from transcript. All I give is the prompt, the transcript file, which is this one, concept, and then I hit return. I'm using agent mode with GPT-4.1. And what he will do, he will analyze the transcript, and that's all in the prompt. He will analyze the transcript, and then I give detail on how I want the user story to be like, the format of the user story, the name of the file, where I want them to be stored, and so on. And we can see here, it's creating a list of user stories. I can see starting with 01, user login validation, then operator access to all customer insight, user dashboard overview, view banking card, and all the stories respect the same format. So that's something that we use quite a lot, and it's just to show a bit that we can think more than coding. There's way more we can do with those agents.